What up, everyone? My name is Nachum Russell, or Russ, because that's a whole lot easier. And this is Evan Doggett of Doggett Style Dog Training. Welcome. I appreciate you coming on. Um, Introduce
I feel
yourself
like
real
it
quick.
would. I feel it would be nice if we had that. I was jamming to that beat just a second ago. It should just be playing the whole, however long we end up chatting.
Just let it keep
Uh,
going in the background,
just let it
right?
ride. Just let it
Yeah.
ride. And
I
I,
got
I,
I
I
got to
found
get
out
some
the
theme
hard
music.
way that if you are listening to Spotify and then go live on Facebook, that it's like blaringly loud for the audience when they do it. Because I like live with these AirPods in, and I like went live, and several people were like, "I'm at work. I'll always have my speakers turned off now."
That's funny. Yeah, I was talking to a friend that I was like, I got to get some theme music for this so that it can be like my own thing rather than like the
Yeah,
whatever this program throws in together with it.
yeah,
So
it's great.
introduce yourself real quick. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, all of that for people who don't know who you are, the two
Yeah,
people.
cool. My name's Evan Doggett. I'm a professional mustache model. People fly me around the world to, put on exhibits. And no, my real last name is Doggett. I'm a dog trainer in Nova Scotia, Canada. I guess I'm a dog trainer everywhere now that I do so much online. I mean, the whole business has pivoted to online, which is great. I still meet up with people here and there, but yeah, train dogs, help people learn about their dogs, have a better relationship with their dogs. Basically, anything to do with a dog. I either have been involved with it or I'm currently doing it, and excited about this whole new Doggett style branding thing. I was with, I did like I said, a bunch of different things before between dog walking and doggy daycare, grooming. I did gun dog training. Honestly, you name it. I've done a lot of different things around dogs, just testing the waters. I'm a super, as everyone will learn very quickly, a very ADD personality, and so I get bored with things. So I'm like, I want to learn a little bit about everything. I want to have fun with everything, and that's my whole shtick. Is as long as I'm having fun, as long as my clients are having fun, giddy up.
Yeah, that's what that when I first found you online, that's what I was drawn to you about was that your content stands out because it's fun. It's not the same boring like here's how you get your dog to go to place and everyone doing the
Right.
same thing. It stands out. It's different. It's fun, and it's like it's you. You shine through more than anything else to me. And I think that's really cool. It's different. Most people don't have a way of putting themselves into their content that it's actually theirs. I think that's really cool that you've done that in a real way.
I
Um,
think for the trainers
mhm.
listening and striving to figure out who they are and who they want to be online, it's like just shoot a lot of video. Just do a lot of video. A lot of people talk. I remember being at the IECP conference a couple of years ago, and people are like, "I don't know how you do it." Like, I pull out my phone, and I get all freaked out, and I don't have the right gear and whatever. I'm like, don't post it. Don't like. I would literally. I remember I used to. I'd have a whiteboard in my training facility, which was like a garage, and I would just literally just like make a line, just ticking off those lines for every take that I would do before I posted something. It'd be like 30, 40 takes, like just trying to get it perfect. I'd write out scripts, and then one day I just went, fuck it. Hey, bonjour, and I just came out with
Yeah.
bonjour, everybody, and
Yeah.
but it took those takes. There's literally on the Facebook page. I don't. The last time I looked, it was like 2,500, and that was maybe a year ago. Videos, just talk to the camera, and I think that's what people are after, right? Is like if they get to know you, they want their dog trained, but they want a relationship at the same time, which
Yeah.
is important.
The only way to really stand out in this industry, because this industry's like saturated. There's so many trainers. And the only way to really stand out is to put yourself in it. And that's really what makes you different. Like, yeah, you can have your own training approach and everybody does things slightly different, but there's only so many ways to train a dog when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And what really differentiates it is that it's you doing it and that you're putting yourself into it. Like when I got into this, I've spoken about this on here so many times, so people are probably annoyed that I'm going to say it again. But like I started the way that I started my social media presence was by 60-second videos every single day.
Nice.
And I started the same thing as you. I would, if you would have seen my phone, you would have seen 100 takes of 10 seconds of me just trying to like look at the camera and actually be myself for a second. And I was totally faking being myself. But eventually it grew into like this. Now I can do this and feel comfortable on camera, and it makes it real. It makes it something that people can connect with. When I go to a client's house, it's like they know me now. They don't just know what I do, they know me. That's important.
Yeah, it makes the sell a lot easier because people need to trust you. You know, they're going to bring you into their home. They're going to trust you with a family member. You know, these dogs are family. There's got Pipa, our little new rescue dog from Costa Rica. Pipa, say hola. And then Vega, there's no way she's lifting her head. You wouldn't be able to see her anyway. But yeah, it's they're family members. You know, they're not just like, no, you never get a call from the person that changed their dog outside 24 hours a day. Like you're not, you're typically not getting a call unless it's from the SPCA or something. So yeah, it's important to share who you are and to be who you are. And if that's someone that's just a straight edge, person, or someone wacky like me, it grow into it. That's, if someone's asking for advice, which there you go.
I used to listen to a shit ton of Gary Vee when I was first getting into all this. And he always says like to be yourself, right? But I remember one time, I think it was like a piece from one of his keynotes, and it just stuck really well. People were asking him like, what does this mean, be yourself? What is it? He's like, be yourself like yourself. Don't be yourself like Gary Vee. That's not going to work, you know? And it's an important thing though, because you can tell someone like be yourself, and they're going to start ending every video with like what do you say? Know that you're loved, meow, whatever your fucking thing is, right? And it's not going to work. It's not going to be real. The whole key is to truly connect with you, and that's the hard part about it too. I think it's a fascinating thing how hard it is to be yourself, even though it's the most natural thing technically, but it's an interesting idea.
Well, it's a really vulnerable thing, right? I mean, you're trying to like I talk about like my struggle with drug addiction, with alcohol, which was a plunge for me because like I don't want people to know that, but at the same time, I'm like, I want people to know that because there's someone else out there being like smoking a joint, being like, this is normal, I should do this, knowing that it makes you feel like shit. For some people it's great, it works and whatever. I'm Canadian, I've been smoking a lot of weed since I was young, and my dad was a cop, like, of course, obviously, right? I mean, every son of a cop is a side, has a little side hustle beside the lawn cutting and growing business. But yeah, it was for me, it's like, it's my truth, and I know that it could help somebody. So I have people reach out that are like, hey, I relate to that and I have a problem with the dog. And that's not why I do it. It's just, it helps to be yourself, as opposed to if it's never on selfie mode and you're always just taking pictures and videos of the dogs, that's great. But the person's not hiring the dog you're looking at. The person is hiring you, hopefully. Hopefully. So it starts a conversation.
For me, it's been one of the greatest parts personally, besides for like the dog training side of it, but of this journey that I've gone into of putting myself on social media and being very open and building a business really all through social media, because like it's the way that all my clients have found me. And the part that's affected me the most though is that aspect of it, like in a personal way, in a personal journey side of it, of being comfortable with being much more comfortable with being myself than I was before, and more confident in myself. I think it's a very powerful thing. The idea of putting videos out there, besides that it's like great for marketing, but what it can do for you as a person is super powerful. Like just to become comfortable with who you are. I mean, I used to hate my voice. I hated it. Now it's like, I like being on camera. It's a very fascinating thing to me of what it can do for a person's confidence, and then think about like, why do I hate it? Like, why do I not like my voice? Why do I not like being on camera? What's going on there?
That's funny because I was listening to one of your podcasts today actually, and I was like, he's got a great voice. You know, so it's funny what we hate about ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, I hate my devilish good looks. Like I hate it. I wake up every morning. I'm like, fuck, you're handsome. What a terrible, terrible. Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to work through those things, right? You have to work through those things,
Yeah.
and then equally being, also being okay with not always being on. Like for me, I try to entertain as much as I educate, and I've been criticized about that. And I'm like, there goes somewhere else, because this is in part for me, but also when some people show up to the facility and they're like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
I'm like, "We're not. It's not a party day today. We're not partying." Um, yeah, it's, you know, it's just a journey learning who you are and who you want to be on social, but equally that it's, you know, if you are a busy person, it doesn't always have to be a party, right?
Yeah. There's different aspects
But if
that
you can
needs to
have
be.
fun and be true, it's, you know, be honest. It makes it easier when you're dealing with the people.
Yeah, absolutely. So how and why are you a dog trainer? Like, how did you become a dog trainer? Why are you a dog trainer?
Well, when your last name is Doggett, your parents force you at an early age to sign a blood oath that you will be a trainer. No, my parents, it was the opposite, really. They were like, don't do that. My plan, my dad was a Mountie, RCMP. It's like our national police. If you ever
Hmm.
saw the stereotypical image of the guy in the red jacket riding a horse, that's our police force. There's less horse riding these days. They do use cars, but my dad was a cop and he was a Mountie, and so the plan was always to follow in his footsteps. Like the first time I saw a canine unit, I was probably, I don't know, like 7 or 8, and I was like, that I want to do that. And as I grew older and discovered drugs and partying, I was like, nah, let's not, let's not. And finished high school, and my parents were like, well, you can't live here. You don't have good enough grades for university. We're not just throwing away money, so figure it out. So I went to Europe for a year. I worked a bunch of jobs during high school and all of that. Um, Went to Europe, traveled, went to Africa, went to South America, and taught English as a second language. And one day, 3 years into it, I was living in Bogota, Colombia, and my parents called me and they said, Evan, congratulations, you got into St. FX University. And I said, that's weird, I didn't apply. And they said, we applied for you, get the fuck home. I was like, oh
They
my
were
God.
desperate.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a cop and your kid's living in Colombia, it's yeah, the urgency. I get it now as a dad. I'm a dad of two little tornado boys now, and I get it, you know, like the unknown. But yeah, I came back, I went to university, and then prior, like when I was in Colombia, everywhere I'd been, I've always been around dogs, always loved dogs, but I kind of gave up on the dream of being a trainer, because I didn't think of trainer as a trainer. I only ever thought of it as it was like RCMP or nothing, you know, like police, canine unit or nothing. And so the journey of university, you know, is one of partying typically. And I wanted something. I did an exchange in Argentina, and I came back and I was like, I need something to be my rock. I need something to put all of this craziness into. And I went to the SPCA when I flew back into Montreal, and I picked up a dog, and he will forever live on in our logo. It was Rush, and he was such a bad dog. Reactive to people, cat aggressive. Not like he was great with dogs, but you know, he definitely got into quite a few fights as well. Just doing things like going to the dog park and not knowing, you know, just cutting them loose and being like, "Oh, the dogs are great." And then so I came back to and finished university with him and started working at the local doggy daycare. Started volunteering, grooming, and all this stuff. And one day, this lady came into the grooming facility and was like, oh my God, Cesar Milan has a course now. I keep applying, but they keep denying me, because she was a little bit, and I applied and got in. And, you know, it was like a $10,000 ticket basically between the flight and all of that stuff. So I quit drinking for the rest of university. Mission accomplished.
Nice.
Took all that money, took my student loan money, borrowed money from my then girlfriend's mom, because my parents were like, how much California? You're supposed to be in university right now. Flew out, did that. And that was just the affirmation. This is what I want to do. Because when I got there, I was like, I had already binge watched every season of Cesar Milan. When I got the dog, it was like, well, what are you supposed to feed a dog? Well, what are you supposed to do this? So I was spending as much time learning about dogs as I was on my, university degree, which was not in dog training. And so, I went out to Cesar's and got to meet a bunch of other trainers. And it just kind of opened my eyes to like, oh my God, there's other trainers that do things other ways and whatever, and finish university. And that was the beginning.
Yeah. How long did you actually train with Cesar, or you just went for one of his training programs?
Yeah, I just went for the Training Cesar's Way week-long debauchery.
Gotcha. What is that like? I'm curious about it.
It was really good. Like for someone super green, it gives you, a lot of it was the experience, being in California with Cesar Milan and being on the property and learning about, pack dynamics and things like that. It's funny because I try to reflect on that because I get asked that question a lot, and I'm like, I don't know that I learned anything. Like I definitely I absorbed things, but there's nothing that Cesar Milan does that I'm like, I do that, like nothing. Like I, on a daily basis, tell people not to pin their dogs, like you don't need to go
right.
and poke your dogs. Like anything you've seen on the show, don't do that shit. You're going to get bit. And so, but it was the experience. It was that jumping off point. But I had this really cool moment with Cesar, where they were going to do pack walks. Every morning they did pack walks, but I'm like, it's that's something that I did to help pay to get here. I'm just going to hang out with my dog and play fetch. And it's actually my Gmail account picture. I'm looking at it right now, which is kind of cool because Rush has passed recently. He died a couple of months ago like 2 months ago of cancer. But it's a picture of me throwing the stick for Rush with this like sunrise coming up in California. And that morning I was like, okay, I finished playing fetch. And I'm coming up the hill and Cesar Milan's coming down the hill, and we met in the middle. He had his pack of dogs. Rush and Junior started playing together and we started talking, and I was like, hey, can you teach me? Can I hang out with you? And we were speaking in Spanish because I was living in Colombia prior to that, right? So I spoke some Spanish, and I was in Argentina and all that. So we're speaking Spanish, and he's like, yeah, okay, whatever, you can hang out with me. And he was kind of off. But it was funny. He was one way I hung out with all the Spanish speaking people that week, like everyone from Spain and Mexico and all of that, because that's the fun crowd. And he would be like Cesar, like his authentic self with the Spanish speaking people. And then it was like white crowd Cesar, like
those were his
all
people.
Polite. Yeah, right. Those are his people. Like you can feel more authentic with your people, and you're speaking your native language and all that. So like the jokes translate and all that. But so it was like celebrity Cesar, but I got to see the authentic side, which was pretty cool. But so we go in to like where he's feeding the llamas, and I was like, this is my moment, Evan, don't screw it up. Don't screw it up. You're with Cesar Milan alone. Like, ready to snip a lock of his hair, but he didn't have very much. So, so I was like, can you teach me something? And he's like, what do you want to know? And I was like, anything, like whatever you want to teach me. And he's like, no, like, get it, like he's just like boom, right into it, super Mexican, just like really direct, like, no, D-man, like what is it? And I was like, can you tell me about a mistake you've made in your personal and business life so that I don't have to make it myself? The biggest mistakes you've made.
That's a good
and
question.
He's he just looks at me, and it came out of nowhere, and he just looks at me and goes, just like, oh, fucking Spanish. And it turns out that day was the first day he was going to see his oldest son for the first time in 5 years. So we had this real like paternal moment with me drawing in the sand, and his business advice was never take anybody for their word, always sign a contract and make sure that contract is legit, because the world knows him as, and this is not breaking news, but the world knows him as the Dog Whisperer, but he doesn't own that title. National Geographic owns that title. All the Cesar Milan Dog Whisperer brushes and kennels and T-shirts and hats and all that merch. He never made a cent off of it, a penny. And then his personal life advice was, in your bubble, you're going to have naysayers and you're going to have yes people. And you don't want yes people that are just false yes people, but you want people to encourage you. And he said the number one person in my life, the person I put the closest, was my biggest naysayer. That person was always saying, no, it's not going to work. Don't do that. Why try? Don't dream, basically. And he said, it's a really hard thing to live with when you're living with someone that's just going, no, 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 nothing's going to work. And yeah, that was his two biggest pieces of advice. And it served me very, very well all of these years.
I feel like that moment was probably like the most that anybody's really gotten from something like that, because you were able to connect with him on a real personal level, not just like meeting the celebrity Cesar, but actually like you got something real out of him that's very different. Yeah. Like, obviously I was obsessed with Cesar too. Anybody who says they weren't, who trains dogs, is just lying. I don't believe it. but yeah. I think that what I connected with a lot when I would watch him was his pack work, because that was a big part of how I learned about dogs. Was when I was at the daycare I used to work at, was through the dogs. I didn't learn from anybody in the beginning. I didn't even know that dog training was an industry when I started working with dogs. Like, I didn't know this was a thing. So it was the dog. I think
that's what I got when I got to California. I was like, I remember I hung out a lot with, Byron Flores. Anyway, he's in Jersey, I think. He doesn't have a big facility or anything. But anyway, Byron, we hung out, and I was like, well, do you actually train dogs? Like, oh, that, and there was someone else there that was clearly just from the purely positive, just to be like, are you secretly beating dogs? And I was like, oh, what's clicker training? Nothing. Like, nothing. There was a guy from Toronto that was working with Karen Pryor, and he was definitely there just to find out the inner secrets or whatever. But I was like, oh my God, things are not just Cesar Milan. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And I get to meet, so Sherry Lucas and Brian Agnew were there, and I spent enough time talking to Brian to learn about nutrition, who put me in the direction of Wendy Volhard, and through Wendy I met Teresa Richmond and Krista Myers and a bunch of other amazing people. And Krista introduced me to Jason Vasconi, Jason, and it was just like, oh my God, there's so many different people and trainers and whatever. And I came back, finished university, went into British Columbia, trained hunting dogs for almost a year, learned what I don't want to do, how I don't want to train dogs. We'll leave it at that. Just the really old school side of training. And I was like, no, moved back to British Columbia, which is the opposite side of the country. Drove back with my boy Rush, started my own thing, and then joined Unleash Potential, which was a blessing. Got to work with Duke for 5 years, Duke Ferguson, and Ted Themiadis, who I went to Australia with last year. And yeah, I've just been, fortunate to meet
Can you say Ted's last name?
Themiadis.
I wish I can say that.
Yeah,
I always feel so bad when I can't pronounce people's names when I have a name that nobody can say. I'm like, I should be the one.
Knockham's not that hard. Knockham, right?
Do a ch.
Nope.
Exactly. Exactly. It looks like it's not so hard, but then when you hear it, all right, I give up. That's why I'm Russ, because that's easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I became Russ when I started working with dogs, when I realized that nobody in the world can actually say my name. So we had to figure something out that would work.
What's your background?
I'm Jewish. I was raised in a I guess the world would call it an ultra Orthodox Jewish home.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up with tattoos and piercings and long hair being a part of life. Hence the Cha name, a good Jewy Cha name.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how I was raised. I'm, I guess, the tie-dye sheep in the family. And when I was around 15, 16, I kind of left that community, although I'm still very connected to it and I still love it. And I love my family and all of that stuff. I'm just different.
Yeah.
And I dropped out of high school when I was super young, like 15.
Oh, wow.
Because that was kind of all connected. Dropping out of the system was dropping out
Well,
of
did
school.
you go to a Jewish school?
Yeah. So schooling for me was very different than schooling for most kids in America. So as a little kid, we didn't finish school at 2:00. We finished school at 5:30 because we would have religious.
The Torah's long.
Yeah, well, we'd have religious studies in the morning, and then we'd have the regular academic stuff in the afternoon that everybody else learned. So it was like two schools in one, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very different than the average public school education that most kids get in their home in the afternoon to enjoy their life. Yeah, so I dropped out of high school when I was really young. I went off to Israel for almost a year when I was 16, 17. I turned 17 in Israel. And I spent not a full year there, I guess about 7 or 8 months there.
Living with family?
No, family? I was officially in a school. But it was like a lot of this is going to sound foreign to a lot of people, but why not? I'll explain it. So it was a school for Jewish rebels, essentially. Kids that dropped out of the system, were partying, were having fun, were living their good life. And we were all put into one big building to try to get better, but obviously we're just gonna party.
Do the same shit. Yeah.
So
but in Israel.
Yeah, so it was. I had a great time. I ended up leaving that school after a while and kind of just traveling the country and couch surfing, living in a youth hostel for a while in the old city of Jerusalem, which is like a whole trip. It's really cool. I lived in a youth hostel there for a couple of months till they kicked me out because I just overstayed my welcome, I guess.
Yeah.
And I had a great time there. I partied a lot, got into drugs and alcohol a lot. And when I came back to America, this is cool. I never shared this whole story on my podcast, so why not?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
When I came back to America, I was still 17 when I got back. So I started working right away. I did all sorts. I wanted to make money, so I worked in a bakery. Literally not in the front, like I was in the back making breads. You know, like challah bread, Hali bread. People, yeah. So that's what I did for a bit. Then I worked in a bagel store, and I became a manager of a bagel store for a while, and did all sorts of stuff there. And then after that, what did I do after that? I was working in a mainstream school, but with special education children. So
that's the best.
Yeah, so it's called a paraprofessional. Basically, it means that the kids are in a mainstream classroom, but they have one-on-one me being there.
Assistant.
I was less of an educational person officially, although it ended up becoming part of my job, and I was more there for like physical help. So I worked with a blind student for a while. I learned how to read Braille.
Cool.
I don't remember how to do it at all because if you don't practice it, it goes away really quick. It's so different. And I learned a ton from that job. It was really cool. Made some great friends there who I'm still friends with. And then after that, I started working in a group home for developmentally disabled adults. Also learned a ton of stuff from there that is like apropos to life in general. And then while I was working there, I went to Colorado when pot became legal and partied really hard.
Farming.
20. Came back, they knew exactly why I was there, and they were waiting for me with the drug test when I walked back in. And they fired me. They kind of used it as their excuse to get rid of me because I didn't do things their way. I was very much into giving these adults options of how to live their life versus me telling them what to do. I believe that they should be treated as adults rather than treated as children in adult bodies, and that they should be able to learn that there's consequences for their behavior, both good and bad. So if you eat a muffin at 4 a.m, you're going to get fat and your doctor's not going to be happy with you, and you should be able to work through that like any other adult, right? And they didn't like that style of how I approached it. So
It was
They
the drugs.
yeah,
It was the drugs,
yeah.
right?
So they let me go, which was the best thing that happened to me
Yeah.
because after that I found dogs. At some
Oh,
point in
cool.
between that, I got my own dog who was a total ass, like
Yeah.
horrible. I love him, but he wasn't a good dog. I messed him up. I knew nothing about dogs at all,
Yeah.
and I
As we
messed him
do.
up. And then I decided now that I don't have a job, I'm going to just party and go to music festivals and concerts until I'm broke. So I did that and it was fantastic. And then I was broke and needed a job. And I went into this local daycare place and got a job there and been working with dogs ever since. So I started off picking up shit and walking dogs and eventually became one of the managers and a trainer. And I went to training school here in New York City for a little bit. And then left there and Calm Canine Training started.
Oh, wow.
That's the gist of it. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And it's that life experience. It's that travel. It's that, the rebellious stuff, but also the fact that you lived and that you're not, sitting there being like, I wonder what a rave is like, it's like, I've been there.
Yeah.
I did that. Like I can take the dogs for a walk now,
Yeah. I'm so done with it. Like, okay, I love
Right.
live music. When music comes back, I'll definitely be going. But it's like
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
need to go out and party to get it out. It's all out of my system already. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny. My wife is from Quebec, which is the most French province in
Mhm.
Canada. And the legal drinking their age is 18, which means they start when they're like 14.
Right.
But then they, for the most part, it seems like they get it out of their system by the time they're, 20, as opposed to, most people that don't calm down until they're 50,
Yeah. If
or whatever. And some
or they
people never
start when
do.
they're
And
40.
honestly, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem,
Yeah.
and that's like my motto for dog training too. Like with clients, they get there's so many effing rules, and that's the one thing that I didn't like about, or I don't like about some people's methods, honestly. But if it works for the client, it works for the client. But like, is my dog allowed on the couch? Is my dog allowed? And they always they come at you and they're like, I know I'm not supposed to do this. I know I'm not supposed to do this thing, but I'm like, well, like with sleeping in the bed, I just lift up my ring and I go, happily married. I'm not joining you. I don't care where your dog sleeps, as long as it's not a problem. But if you roll over and the dog's like, get out of my effing bed, it's a problem. It's a problem. But yeah, that's my whole thing. So same thing with drinking and drugs. Like, I don't have a problem with people doing anything really, as long
Yeah.
as you're being an adult about it and you're not messing up everyone's life, then
It's about
whatever.
it's about self-awareness with the personal stuff, the drugs and alcohol, and with your dogs. It's like your
Mm,
dog best. At the end of the day, you know your dog best. And if you're self-aware about it and you also know I believe that most owners, especially once they've worked with a trainer, they know what's best for their dog and themselves. They just want to hear it from someone else sometimes
yep.
or don't want to actually face it. But if they really would be honest about it with themselves, I think most of the time they would know what's best. Like, is it actually best for your dog to be in your bed or not? And you can kind of figure it out, and try it out and see what happens. And like, is your dog being more of an ass during the day because he's sleeping in your bed? Then maybe switch that up. It's all on you,
Yeah.
right? Like you
Yeah.
got to have that self-awareness and that self-accountability to be able to switch things up when you see that just because it worked for your old dog or your friend's dog or whatever, that it's not working for this dog. So switch it up, right? Just like how one person can have a glass of wine and be fine, and I can have a glass of wine and quit my life and be drinking. Like it's the same idea,
Yeah.
it has to be looked at in a very individual way. I think that there's so much that relates between addiction and dog training. To me, it's like everything. It's the same.
I wish someone would write a book. I used to say it's going to be me, but I just realized that, like, definitely not at this stage of my life. There's no book writing happening. Maybe a pamphlet. I might write a pamphlet on, who am I kidding? There's no pamphlets getting written. It's all video. It's video or nothing. And so there's this correlation between like my life is a mess and my dog is a mess. Like, there's been a lot of times where I'm like, you're recently divorced, aren't you? And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, the way your dog's acting, like your dog's getting super protective of you because you're using it as a cry pillow. And you're, every man that you see, you're like, you or whatever the situation. Typically that's the case. But it's, I'm obviously swayed in my opinion because it's like 95% of women that come to see me for training. It's often the women. I was talking about this today with someone. It's like the mom of the family has to do everything, in a lot of ways, and they often don't feel supported. So that's one thing that I loved about Cesar Milan. I say loved like he's dead, but it's just because I don't follow him or hardly anybody on social. But like it was always about like empowerment, like be a leader. But I also at the same time I'm like, what does that even mean? Like be a leader and take charge and do all this stuff. I think leadership only happens through experience, having a bunch of positive experiences, being like, I got this, and that's why basic obedience is so important if I'm with the like purely positive community, the beyond purely positive community, the like, I don't know how to define them, but like there's some people out there that are like, obedience is bad, right?
Like the extremist of it.
Right. Like just be with your dog, and a dog is a sacred thing, which I believe they are, but just let them do whatever they want to do. And then there's always problems to that because it's a relationship, and like, there's things that the dog needs from me and I need from the dog. But when you have that, like your basic obedience down tight and you have it practiced, it gives you something to fall back on when the shit hits the fan. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I love about certain people that I follow, like David Goggins and some of these crazy athletic people, is like, they talk about doing hard Wim Hof. They talk about doing hard things early in the day. So that way, when actual hard things happen, like things outside of your control, like your tire goes flat or your wife leaves you or whatever, is like, I just got out of a frozen lake. Like I'll be fine.
Wim Hof I love Wim Hof. I did about 40 days straight of dipping in the ocean this winter.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, after getting like, I should be doing it still, and I totally stopped because I'm lazy and that's my personality. But I challenged myself for 30 days consistently every single day, no matter the weather, no matter how I feel, to get into the ocean during the winter. I did it for about 40 days, but 30 days was my self-challenge. And it was really fascinating.
Dip, like in and out, or what was the?
No, staying in. So I would do his breath work before. Do you know about Wim Hof? Have you listened to his stuff at all?
Yeah, I take a cold shower every day.
Breath work. So cold showers for me was harder than going in the ocean. Because I just felt like one part of my body's not getting the water while the other is, and the contrast was much harder.
and it's like, you're taking the cold water and you're like,
yeah, it was so much harder. But because I started with cold showers when I first got into it, I was like, okay, I'm going to just start easy, like 10 seconds of cold water at the end of my good hot shower, like how he says to do it. Then I was like, fuck it, I'm going all in. And I live right on the water, so I live right near the bay. So I would just drive my Jeep right up to the water, put the heat on like full blast, have like really good music playing inside, and do my breath work beforehand, like 10 or 15 minutes of breath work, and then go in. My max that I stayed in there was 4.5 minutes. Yeah, it was really, really cool what I like experienced through it in a physical way and also in a mental way. Like what it did for me was very powerful. Just the fact of knowing that I can do something that most people think is impossible. Like there were people who were legit. It's right along the street where I went, so people were seriously concerned for me. People would be like, "You got to get out of there. That's dangerous. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Come on in. Like, come join me. You're not gonna die. I promise you." Yeah. So, but it's a fascinating thing. Like going back to why you brought it up, of setting that tone and also having that pre-existing stress that you put yourself through to fall back on, and it kind of rewires your mind, like so that when the stress of life that will always comes up, your mind goes, "Oh, I got this. We did this morning. Like it's okay. Like I know how to work through it." And it changes the messaging in your brain, because I convinced a couple of people to come in the water with me once or twice, like some friends, and I got my dad to do it with me one time. And everyone said the same thing. The initial reaction when your toe hits that like freezing water with like ice floating in it, the initial reaction is get out. right? Like your
Yeah.
mind sending like,
Panic.
get out, get out, get out. It's danger, right? And
Yeah.
if you're able to interrupt that message and be like, no, you're safe, you're okay, you're fine, that's when the change happens. That's when you could actually walk in calmly and breathe through it. And then when the actual stresses of life comes up, like a flat tire or whatever it is in life that is going to come up no matter what, your mind can go from being get away from this situation or shut down because of the situation to you got this, you're okay, you're safe. And then dog training, since it is a dog podcast, is literally the same thing of how we work dogs through stresses, you know?
Yeah.
It's like when people ask, how do I build my dog's confidence? Do the things that are hard for them and work them through it so that when the other shit comes up that they struggle with, their mind is going to, in a sense, go back to it in the same way of like, they know they can work through things. It might not be as conscious as for us, but it definitely exists there. Their brain, it's not that different. It's just lower. It's just a lower level.
They're not thinking about TikTok, you know?
Right.
So, you know, they're not worried about that Instagram sponsorship that might come through. They're just living in the moment. That's why, like, my favorite thing to see is after a dog gets into an argument or even sometimes a fight, and when you actually get it broken up, they shake and they just move on,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, if your dog struggles with anxiety, you know, I just did this on my podcast Sunday or whatever, was is your dog's anxiety making you anxious? And it's, you know, it's, for me, it's always exercise, stupid amount of exercise, nutrition, and then just a regular obedience practice, right? Do that thing that you can fall back on when you're having that. But like, I've never met an anxious dog that after running for a couple of days behind the four-wheeler, because, you know, my facility's, you know, 53 acres and we go four-wheeling and do all that, swimming in the pond and stuff like that. And after a couple of days of that with all the pack work and stuff, like, no anxiety, you know, they're just fine. They're
It's
just
like
able to
hitting the
cope.
gym.
Yeah.
For a person, you know, it does something that it just does something to your mind. It releases those good endorphins, and it's like a natural anxiety release.
But the cold does it so
Yeah,
fast.
yeah,
The cold does it faster than anything, and there's no panic at the gym, you know,
right.
not as much anyway.
That's why I loved the cold so much when I was doing it. Like I should get back into it before the winter's completely over here. But what
Yeah,
I
the
love so much
Atlantic's always cold, but yeah.
nah, like I'm by the beach, it gets beautiful. Like
Oh,
it's
okay, yeah.
so I have like the beach on one side. I'm on a peninsula, so there's the beach and then there's the bay on the other side. So
Cool.
it gets nice. But like the when I would go in, I remember in the beginning thinking like, what am I supposed to think? Like, is this supposed to be meditative? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then I'm in there and I'm like, can't think of anything, right? You like, there's nothing to think about. It doesn't matter what was going on right before or what's going to happen after. It's like, just survive, just survive.
Yeah,
And it's a
yeah.
powerful thing.
Yeah, I've explained to people several times that I see the I physically feel the blood just do this, you know, it just comes out of that frontal cortex and just gone. And what's really cool is, so this little dog's from Costa Rica, and I'm not into jackets for dogs, not typically anyway. There was a couple of days that were like, there was a day that was like minus 29, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's still cold.
Cold.
Cold, yeah. And I was like, okay, you can wear a jacket today, but to see her work through it, and people were like, oh, that's so cruel. Fucking take my shirt off too. Fine, you know, she's got more hair than I do. You know, like 6 nipple hairs. That's it. It's protecting me. And the rest of it's just frozen. But you deal with it, and you know, she's not sleeping outside or anything like that. Now, you know, today's minus 20, minus 19. And she's running around outside. She's rolling in the snow. She's fine. She's climatized. But I want to force my dogs to do hard things, to put them in positions that they can get through to the other side. You know, have a dog barking in their face. You know, that one dog's just going, I'm going to kill you the second this leash drops. And initially, it's super stressful for them. It was interesting to look back. I look back to some of the very first footage that I had with Rush, who was the best dog with social. We were talking about the whole pack thing before with Cesar Milan and the whole, man, those dogs, the dogs are the trainers, you know, the dog, like, you get a good pack and it fixes so much. You know, it doesn't teach them obedience, but it just fixes all their
It does
bullshit
the
of like,
mindset stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very
it's
powerful. That's
that,
what I loved about Caesar so much, was watching that side of it, because I was at the same time, while I was trying to figure out life with my own dog and like to get him in
yeah,
order, I was also working in a daycare and then obsessively watching Cesar Milan. And every day I would
good
be going
combo.
into this group of dogs and being like trying to figure out like, how am I going to make sure there's no fight today? How am I going to keep them quiet
Yeah,
today, you know? And
yeah,
it was amazing what I learned from it. I didn't have tools. I wasn't allowed to use tools. I had a spray water bottle, which doesn't
yeah,
do much when you have a pack of excited high energy dogs. You know, it gets them more
yeah.
hyped.
Maybe a couple of super soakers, some like Terminator
Yeah.
super soakers, maybe.
Yeah. And it was fascinating though, because I did at a certain point figure out how to actually get full control over a pack of dogs and have, but not in this controlling way, more in a like, hey, Rusty
Management.
here, let's chill, let's. And it was
Mm.
like, you brought up the idea of like, what is leadership? I'm curious what you think of leadership when it comes to a dog human relationship. What is that? How would you describe that?
I think it's like, you know, I look at them, I look at dogs as like, you bring me something, I bring you something. You know, what is that? What are we here to do? So like there's times where they're going to be the leader and I'm going to be the leader. So what it is like my number one rule is to keep them safe. If I can't keep my dog safe, fail, you know? Like I failed with Pipa the other night. She you know, she wasn't technically on paper, she's still not my dog. Her name is still Cleo, but it's Pipa.
It's already done.
Yeah, it's already done, and it's just a matter of, you know, of paperwork. When she gets her dental done, it's done. But anyway, she bolted out of the car the other night. My mistake. She was in a kennel. You know, the dogs are crated up, and I went to take something out, and she's so good in the kennel. And she was just like boom and pushed her way out. We're in the city, which like I don't live in the city, so we're in a neighborhood that I've never been to at night. She's running around like a wild animal, crossing main roads and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I'm not being a leader. You know, that's not me being a leader. I'm going to post a video of basically what happened and what not to do. And what not to do simply is chase the dog. Don't chase the dog. Quietly calm them. So what I did is I went and got the treats and the leash, and I just try to spot her, you know. But so being a leader is like doing the basic responsible things. So having name tags on your dogs, especially when you have a new rescue dog or whatever, having a collar with a name tag on them, doing things like training them from the get-go, right? To have that level of communication, teaching them something. Yeah, I think it's just like improving on the relationship every day. I think is what leadership is about, right? Yeah, it's my answer.
You think
Final
there's some
answer.
level of give and take to being a leader?
Yeah, so like a leader doesn't. There's a difference between a leader and a dictator, right? So a dictator is just like, you're going to do what I want, when I want, 100% of the time, and I don't consider your needs. And so like I really thought about this fall because Vega, my black lab that you can't see over
Yeah.
there, is a master level hunter. So she competed in a bunch of retriever trials and did really well. And she has her title for master level hunter. And it's like the thing that she loves more than anything. And this year, I more or less gave up hunting. I'm just going through this like whole pre-midlife crisis where, you know, now that I've got kids, before a flock of ducks would fly by and geese, and I would just, you know, pretend I'd line up and bang, bang, bang. And now I'm like, oh, family. Yeah. Like I'm getting soft, Russ. Anyway, so I didn't go duck hunting once this year. And I saw like, you know, it's this, you know, fall is in the air kind of thing. And she missed that. I know she missed that. So I set up the wingers and I did the trial stuff, and it wasn't quite the same. So, you know, I might end up doing it for her. You know, also we eat the meat and we do all that stuff or
Right.
whatever. But yeah, there's ways to go like, okay, like Pipa is a little pit bull, loves to grab and shake and kill things. And so, there's like, we were in the city the other day and you could literally see rats running by. She had so much fun tracking rats. I would clipped her on the harness, and that's part of the reason why afterwards she was just like running around the city. It's like, I never got them. You didn't let me kill them. But yeah, just fulfilling the dog's breed. Like if you have a German Shepherd, maybe teach it how to tug. Or pull or something. If you have a pointer, take it to a field, teach it to be reliable off leash, and let it chase some pheasants.
Yeah. Finding a way to
things like
actually
that.
let your dog be itself, obviously in a healthy way, in a safe way. But yeah, so many dogs that there's very few dogs that actually are bred to be couch potatoes. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure they exist. Like the typical companion dog, I guess, but most dogs at some point genetically, historically, had to have something to feel super fulfilled. And they don't get that. They don't get it. Even from like a structured walk and running around in the park, it's not necessarily fulfilling what they want. I think that's a very important thing, to find that thing that your dog actually wants to do and then doing it with them,
and that's where it's a balance.
Yeah. And to kind of play off of what you were saying a little, like it's so much easier to take direction. If we think about it in a human to human situation, it's a lot easier to take direction from somebody that you also know is going to do things for you and going to be there for you. Nobody likes a boss. Bosses suck. It's why everybody hates their boss, right? But if somebody at a workplace or in life is able to figure out how to switch from being a boss to a leader, where they're there for you, they listen to you, and then they give you the directions, that's when you like going to your job. That's when you like being a part of that culture that's at your job, because they're not telling you what to do. They're not controlling you. They're not being a dictator, like you said. They're there for you, and it's much more of a give and take relationship that you want to follow. It's a whole different game then. And getting a dog to want to follow is the real magic of it all. If somebody gets that, it might start where it's like, okay, you have to listen, and then when you work towards, all right, now you want to listen, that's where it's the best.
For sure, every relationship has some level of manipulation, right? There's no way around it. And it's once you figure out how to manipulate in a healthy way, where the dog goes like, hey, can I have that thing? As opposed to just like, yeah, whatever, you'll give me that thing whenever I want it. I got 20 of those things, right? When you can have that balance where the dog actually goes like, hey, look what I can do. It's a pretty special moment. But again, like your number one rule, or my rule, is like the number one thing that we need to do is keep our animals safe. Like just because she wants to chase rats around the city, I don't just go, okay, well, it fulfills her breed needs. Yeah, she's going to get hit by a car, and then that car is going to drive into, a playground full of kids, and, be
you have a whole
story
already.
Oh yeah, it's already, I got to keep her safe. I got to keep all those babies safe. So yeah, that's the thing. That's leadership for me.
Talk to me a little bit about what your Doggett Style online training is. I mean, all I know about it is that there was this hilarious trailer that I watched at least 30 times and showed it to a bunch of friends because I think it was fantastic. Like the best dog training thing that I've seen in a long time. So I'm assuming that what's actually in the portal is just as fun.
So that commercial was a labor of love. And what's amazing, and we've done a poor job of it, but there's more to come, is we shot that commercial over like 9 days. So there's like 6 commercials worth of material that has not seen the light of day, which will slowly be dripped out. There's a bunch of characters that are still need to see the light of day. But yeah, so the Doggett Style program for me was the thing that I hear the most that is like frustrating is I went on to Google and now I feel schizophrenic, right? Like this person said, hit my dog. This person said, if I even say no to my dog is going to hate me and think I'm cruel. there's everything in between. And like you said, it's a saturated industry and everybody's writing blogs and everyone has their own opinion. And sometimes those opinions work, right? Like sometimes those techniques work. Like when you have a dog that jumps on you and you turn your back and go, ow, 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 you're hurting me. I'm sure there are dogs out there that go like, oh shit, sorry.
Yeah.
I just haven't met one, right?
Because
But
they're not coming to you and I. It's not necessary.
yes, they don't exist. But yeah, so like there are techniques that like, yeah, okay, sure. But one thing that I find is ideal is if someone can listen to one voice and then develop and get some fundamental tools to go like, okay, what do I need to do? Like I'm not a big fan of telling people what they need to do, but trying to educate them so that they can come up with their own decisions. Like, for example, one of my things that I say is if it's an unwanted behavior, any unwanted behavior, it needs to be a family decision or whoever's doing the stuff with the dogs. At that point, I go like, now, like your husband and kids don't get a say. They're not walking them. They're not feeding them. They're not training them. They don't get to have a say. So
Mom's in charge.
you get to, yeah, or dad or whoever's doing it, but it's typically mom. There's, 4 things that I point out of if you have an unwanted behavior. You can ignore it, you can avoid it, you can redirect it, or you can correct it. Here are the pros and cons to all of them. Decide, but have those 4 things: ignore it, avoid it, redirect it, and correct it for anything: jumping, counter surfing, barking, pulling on the leash, whatever, right? So the course is a combination of all of my experience. So for me, there's like 7 elements of a dog's life. So I combined puppyhood and getting a rescue in the same category, even though it's divided. There's X amount. There's over 125 videos because there's so many elements of dog ownership. And if I'm going to learn about grooming from someone who's like, never say no to your dog, and that's not the philosophy, that it gets confusing, right? So for me, it's so I covered a lot of material. And so there's a puppy and rescue section, because the way that I raise a rescue is the same way that I raise a puppy. We've got a schedule for going out to pee. You're definitely sleeping in a crate. You're going to travel in a crate. You're not allowed on the furniture. You're not allowed to do certain stuff for a first while. Obviously Pipa's on a couch over there. I don't know, make cameras backwards. Anyway, so there's a puppy rescue section. There's a whole health section, which talks about nutrition and grooming and exercise and mental health and arthritis and you name it. The health section is actually the second biggest section. There's, how to cut your dog's nails, how to introduce a Dremel, long-haired dog, short-haired dogs, tools. Like I went so above and beyond, Russ, with this program. Like it's such an over deliver. It's ridiculous. And I don't expect people to sit down and watch 125 videos, but the idea is my thought behind it was like, how can I make like a video dictionary or like an encyclopedia kind of thing of like, I want to learn about pulling on the leash. Okay, that's, just type in leash and there'll be like 6 different videos, like which leash do I choose? Options, right? I don't say you have to use this leash. I go, this is the benefits of a biothane leash. This is, whatever. Here's, if I had to own 2 leashes or 3 leashes, this is what they would be. The pros and cons of a flexi. But all the videos the longest video is 14 minutes. The average video length is about 9 minutes. It's just bing, bang, boom, couple of jokes, couple of Harry and Hows, and we're out. You're on to the next one. So people are binge watching it is what it turns out to be, because it, starts with some sort of cheesy joke and ends with one, and it's just compact. This is what you need to know. This is my take on it. This is my experience. Here's what you want to know what I think about dog parks? It's in the program. You want to know how to introduce your adult dog to your puppy that's coming home? Here's 4 different ways that you can do it, and you see the visual, and you can just watch it over and over and over again. There's a whole body language social section, and I'm just adding to it. Again, it's overkill, but I want to I've learned so much, and I want to share that. And during the pandemic, the fact that, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people, lost a lot of things, loved ones and family and stuff like that. So that's why I priced it where it is. There's some people out there that are upset that it's
You
only
undercut
250
everyone.
bucks Canadian. What's that?
You undercut everyone.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say everyone, but it's only 250 bucks Canadian, and it's not an e-collar program. There's no, and I'll never put e-collar stuff in there because personally, I think that's something that it takes. There's so many circumstances with an e-collar, with an electronic training collar, to go like, if that dog has a knot in its neck,
Right.
that's a hard thing to explain and show in a video. To be like, you might go to 80 before you get anything, and then you're going to work at 4, and they're like,
Right.
what? Because the
It's
person
so
puts
individual with
it in
that.
their hand and goes to 80 and goes, fuck that, you know but it doesn't make any sense. And so, like, if I can, that's why I still teach, privately and via Zoom. And honestly, Russ, teaching via Zoom is like a game changer. And if you're going to meet up with people, which I still do, the first couple of lessons, man, it's so it prepares the in-person so much better, because as soon as you enter somebody else's house, that dog is distracted. And then if the dog is distracted, the person is distracted,
Right.
and you still get to teach. So they're hearing like 25% of what you're saying. And then equally, if the dog comes to a facility or you in the park, the second that dog steps outside of their home or something, even walks past the window, they're distracted. And so then the person's distracted. They're not learning, versus I got to get you trained up. I got to teach you how this remote works, how your dog works, how feeding, 14 cups of Alpo before you go for a walk is not the best idea, So once I can get that base foundation of education down, man, oh man, what a difference. And the idea behind the online program is just like, you watch it, you apply it. My whole thing is 3 to 5 times a day for 3 to 5 minutes. That's all it takes to have a trained dog. And it's just about chipping away at it. It's like you taking 10-second showers that led you to 4.5 minutes in the Atlantic,
Right.
which,
Yep, absolutely.
which is, a feat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy that I did it. Now, if I were to go in, it would probably be 30 seconds again, because it's been like at least 2.5 weeks since I've gone in.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool what
Amazing
you've created. It's really cool what you've created. It's essentially, it's like a one-stop shop, because we all hear the same things. Everyone who I speak to has so many conflicted ideas, because even if they're following good trainers, if you're following multiple good trainers, you're going to hear different ideas, because we all say different things and we do things differently and we explain it differently. Even if it's the same concept, that it's going to come out sounding like something else. And it's a very, very cool idea that you've taken it, and like, you could learn it all from me, right? And once somebody's comfortable with you and learning from you, then they have it all there. It's very fascinating. I think it's a really cool idea. I was excited just about the idea existing when I saw your commercial for it. I was like, this is really cool that there's a spot for owners to go where they can get real information, that's good information, and it's done in a good way. I mean, I haven't joined it, but I know just
Yeah, I'll
from
get
the
you
way
a
you
copy.
present the information that it's great, that it's a fun way to learn, which is, again, like I said in the beginning, something that's, I think it's missing. I mean, not everybody could be fun, so not everybody should be fun. But if you have that in you and you could bring that out in your way of teaching, in your way, it's such an important aspect, because it makes it something you want to do. Dog training should be fun at the end of the day, and it's not a lot of time.
Everything should be fun, if you can.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I make jumping into, like, nobody would say 4.5 minutes in the Atlantic sounds fun.
It is.
But like, it is.
Yeah.
Hard things are fun. Do you know what's not fun? I've never had someone be like, I binge watched 3 seasons of whatever. That was so fun. Nobody ever says that, because it's not, because you're not proud of it.
Right.
We literally get off the couch like,
I just did that.
Yeah, I just did that. But doing hard things is fun and rewarding, and yeah, for me, I felt like, and it's why I didn't release it for a long time, was, and I still don't think it's good enough. which is so ironic that there's so much more I have to share. But at some point you got to put it out, right? So if you're a dog trainer out there with something, you got a book half written, do your best to finish up a bit of it and put it out there.
Yeah.
You could do volume 2 later or whatever the thing is. I will caution people that dog trainers that putting together an online course is very expensive. I had no idea going into it how much money it would take to run everything, to do it properly, and that was really important to me, was to have everything succinct and clear and there and easy to function and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's there. And there's, if you're, you or another trainer watching, or a rescue organization, I've got rescue organizations using it as an affiliate program. So their fosters get the program
Nice.
at a heavily discounted rate. And then they sell the program to future people coming in adopting dogs. And it's seamless because the fosters are training these dogs, Doggett style, which is food training, food and leash, right? And so they have this foundation. The dogs understand, this body language thing, because that's what the dog's picking up on. Whether you're speaking, Hebrew or you're speaking Portuguese, the dog understands that this means sit, and this means go to your bed, and this means come. Whatever, they can pick up on that. So. I learned that years ago. I had a German client, and the guy came to pick up his dog, and he's like, whatever. And the dog just looked at him like, I don't know what. And I was like, oh, I need to keep this dog and train it to body language. And that made a huge difference. And so that always stuck with me, was like, if the dog can learn, and that's what they're paying attention to anyway. So it's, but it's learning those lessons.
How often will you accidentally say the wrong command to a dog, but they're watching what you're doing and they do what you wanted them to do anyways, right? Like, because the most natural communication to them is the body language. Everything else is just for us,
Yeah.
It's not necessary. There's no reason for verbal cues at all, besides for the fact that we need it, but it's not for the dog. It doesn't help the dog in any way. If anything, the dog would have a much easier life if we left it all to body language. Like, it's natural to them. It's what they do.
Yeah, get their attention, right? Get their attention. Hey, you. And then, right. But I think also in teaching, what I've realized is that there's a lot of bickering in couples between, like, you're supposed to say come, not here. And it's like, no, guys, just say whatever the hell you want to say. Watch this. Potato. And the dog comes over, and it's like, see, I did that I used to do that in puppy class. And there was this single mom with these 3 little hellion boys. They're beautiful little boys that were just like, you mean we can teach the dog whatever words we want? And I was like, and the mom just looks at me like, no. I'm like, yep. And so they came back later, and Potato was like, go to your bed, and Thunderbolt was lay down, and they weren't like bad words because they were super young boys, but they had a blast with it. I'm like, yeah, great, Thunderbolt it is,
I remember a while ago I had a friend over, and he never understood like what I did with my life till he was actually like hanging out right, and he was like asking me all these questions about like the words I use. He's not a dog person, he doesn't have dogs, didn't grow up with dogs, so it's like, okay, you're a dog trainer, like what does that mean, right? What the hell? And he was asking me all these questions. He was very interested because he was seeing how my dogs were responding to me like really well. And I had a couple of boarding dogs here, and like he was watching the whole interactions and like experiencing it rather than me trying to explain it. And I remember him asking me, and it sounds like it's a childish question, but like for somebody who doesn't get it, he's like, but how do they understand the words, right? Like, how do they understand? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, they don't. Like, I can train I was saying like as a stupid idea, but that I should take a dog and train it all of its commands backwards, right? Sit means down, and down means sit, and up means off, and everything backwards, just to show how meaningless it actually is to the dog, so that people can get it. You have that visual, because a lot of people come with this preconceived notion that dogs understand certain things. They don't consciously say that, but they believe it. And then they try to do it, and the dog doesn't respond because the dog didn't get the manual that it's supposed to know what come means. And and it's like, no, you got to match it up to a language that the dog understands. That's the part that's missing. That's a big part of, I think, a dog trainer's job, is to teach owners how to translate what they want to the dog's language so that they could actually be on the same page.
Yeah. That's one thing that if you speak another language or not, you can make up words. But it does make it easy when you do fluently speak another language to be like to the person, I'll just be like, okay, toca la pared. And they're like, toca la pared, toca la pared, toca la, toca la pared, toca la pared. And then I'll take their hand pre-COVID. Well, here there's like no COVID, so still take their hand. And I'll take their hand and I'll start to squeeze their hand. I'll go, toca la pared, toca la pared. And they're like, they don't get it because they don't speak Spanish. And then I'll take out $20 and I'll start to lure them and I'll put it on the wall and then I'll give them the $20 and then eventually I get them touching the wall and I'm broke at this point. I would use fake bills, but they didn't know that, but until they went to the 7-Eleven later. But they would touch the wall and I'd go boom and I'd start paying them and then I'd go toca la pared and they'd go hey, touch the wall, right?
Yep.
And so, that was kind of when people didn't understand why using positive first works really well. And then once I started doing some of that and we had a little bit of a relationship, then I could take them by the hand and be like, siéntate, and guide them over to the chair and with the money and the pressure from my hand or hook them onto a leash or whatever and show them like the balance, right? When the fun little things to do when you have time with people to be like,
Yeah.
you didn't get the words, but you learned the word very quickly. But it could have been chitty chitty bang bang, means touch the wall or do a backflip or give me a kiss, whatever, right? It's just whatever word. So you can teach your dog commands. But how stressful was that when I was screaming "toca la pared" in your face?
Yep.
It wasn't fun, was it? Yeah. Well, your dog feels the same way. Like, stop screaming at your dog. So,
and at that point,
communication is key.
You with that, like they can just go home and train their dog. Really, you've given them all the information they need through an experience. That's really cool. I like that a lot. I like the whole idea of it a lot. I might use it. It's really cool. What do you love most about what you do?
The people.
Yeah.
The people. Yeah. People always ask, what's that question? Or like, initially it was like, what makes you different than Cesar Milan? Was like, I've never really done it for the dogs. Like some people are going to be like, what the? It's true. Like my plan was RCMP followed by teacher. I went to university and the plan was become a teacher when I lived in, when I lived in South America specifically. I did a little bit, I guess, when I was in Europe unintentionally, but I took a teaching English as a second language course when I was in Ottawa before going to South America, and I was teaching. Like, I'm a teacher. Yeah, I love to teach, but I don't particularly love to teach dogs. Like I have fun. My favorite thing is to mess around with dogs, like go four-wheeling, go swim in the ocean, like to be that kid, to be a dog and do what the dogs do, to have fun. I was listening to music and training a Mastiff today, and before I knew it, I was like, not actually riding her, but on her back, being like, "Yeah, come on, girl," and she's like biting at me, and I like doing that stuff, but teaching her place and whatever, that shit bores me to death. But it's the same as anything. You do the same thing so many times. It's not that fun. Teaching someone how to get their dog to place, isn't that great? It's the conversation along the way. It's the challenge of communicating to someone, hey, this is why this matters, or this is why this doesn't matter. Like, I'll never forget a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago now, I had this client whose golden retriever was being an ass and like pinning other dogs and stuff. And they're like, why does it matter that my dog will do a sit stay or a down stay or a place, or like, what does this have to do with that? I'm like, it's a communication thing. It's a control thing, right? It's that, like, you need to be able to assert that level of control of your dog beforehand, because he's just out of control right now. He's just doing whatever the hell he wants whenever he wants to. And I used to be that guy. I used to be that golden retriever jumping on people and doing all that, thinking it was hilarious. And it's not that hilarious, so like, get some control and then you'll see a big difference. And they got it after time, but like, just those experiences, but also just the people along the way, the people that you meet, and sharing sharing that experience with them, and then obviously goofing off with dogs. Like we used to do dog camp. The guy that worked for me, we would just like turn off our cell phones for a week and just hike with a pack of like, I think the most we ever had was 28 dogs, and we're like
That's
in the
amazing.
woods, like deep in the woods. And one year we had 2 4-wheelers, and we just like were gone the whole day, and with 20 some dogs, and just goofing off, and trying to find this elusive waterfall that we still never found for 4 years and 8 dog camps later or whatever. But yeah, so it's it's been great, helping people, and also those moments where people are like, you saved my marriage, or like, that saved my dog's life, or whatever. There's obviously those glorious moments too, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun way to learn. And again, it's one of those careers that there's no end in the learning. If you want there not to be, there's been quite a few times where I've burnt out doing the same thing, but like you can learn about detection and tracking and sports and rehab and pack dynamics and grooming and body language and behavior, and it never ends. It never ends, and then you find that one dog, like, dog training is dog training for the most part, when you learn the positive and the negative and the balance and about a lot of the tools. But it's then figuring out the puzzle of some dogs. But it's like, okay, what else can this dog do? What else does this person need to learn? And then just figuring out your own way along the way of like, what is it that this person wants? I think that was hard for me to learn. It took a long time, being in kind of a cookie cutter mold of like, this person doesn't give a shit about this. They just need to have their dog not do X, Y, and Z, and then they want to be able to trust and enjoy their dog more,
Yeah.
So not making it about like, this is my plan for you, but really learning to ask the people and learning about the people and learning how to help them the best.
I really love that your response was the people, even though a lot of people are gonna be like, "Well, he doesn't like the dogs." It's like, no, I get it, because
I hate dogs. Hate dogs. I wanted to train cats, but my last name was Doggett. So
you were just forced
yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
There's the most common thing that people hear is, "I want to work with dogs because I hate people." Like you hear it all the time, and
Those guys
I
don't make it, do they?
right. And when I started working in the daycare that I worked at, I had some of that. I was like, this is great. I don't ever have to be around people. And then I was like, fuck, I miss being around people. And and like I'm still not a very socially bubbly person. It's not my
Yeah.
personality. But
Yeah.
when I started to develop my people skills more was when I started to enjoy dog training more and get more out
Yeah.
of it, and ultimately get better at it, really, because these dogs are all owned by people. We're not training feral dogs. We're not training dogs that are working dogs. They all go home to people. And you're not going to ever be successful if you can't connect with people on a personal level that they relate to make it real for them. And it's probably the most rewarding aspect of it when it comes down to it. Like, yeah, it can be super rewarding to save a dog's life, to get a dog off of medication, to, all those things that come along with like the good cases. But it's even more rewarding knowing like that the owner is now happy and the owner's enjoying their life, and the husband's not in the hospital from dog bites anymore, and all of that stuff that
Yeah.
comes up. It's like, that's the really special stuff that, if you stay in the state of mind of, I love dogs, I hate people, you're never going to get to experience that next level that comes along with it. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm happy that you said that answer to it. I relate to it a lot. It's an important aspect of it all.
I think there's a place for those trainers that are just like, fuck people.
Yeah.
Because that, okay, fair enough. You hate people. You've had a rough life or whatever. Typically that's the case, but is like, okay, then work with someone that can be the face.
Right.
Either don't own your own company because you're jading a lot of people, or own your own company and have someone else be the face of that company, whether you own it or not. Like, I think there's definitely a role for those people to just train board and trains, to just
Yeah.
spend their time with the dogs or work at a daycare or whatever. But the people need the information, like I've seen dogs very well trained with a board and train. Like doing plates at 300 yards and followed by a backflip, and then they fetch a beer, like very well trained. And then the information just went nowhere,
Yeah.
And I've experienced that myself. Like I didn't like I'm talking about myself too, minus the backflip and fetch a beer. But like train a dog really, really well, and then like the dog just fails. And that's not always on me, but there's been plenty of times where it was on me, where I was just like, I didn't put the people first, because I was like, you know what? You've already paid me and you didn't pay me enough, and I've already talked to you enough, and I'm not going to help you. That was a long time ago, old Evan. But we all get self-entitled by times and whatnot. And then there's sometimes where people are just take advantage of. People are going to be people, right? But I think the better your communication is, the less. I love all of my clients now, all of them. And I was talking to somebody the other day, who we both know, and he was complaining about his clients, and I went, you gotta take responsibility for this. And he's like, no, but it's a person. I'm like, it's not the person. And the only reason I could say that is because my wife says that every day when I'm like, this friggin' happened, whatever. And she's like, and how is that your fault? And I'm like, it's not my fault. Were you not listening to the story? And
You
she's
missed
like,
the whole thing.
yeah. And
Let's
she's
explain
like,
to you how it's their fault.
yeah. And it's often about the kids or whatever,
Yeah.
this guy cut me off. And she's like, yeah, but like, how can you take responsibility for that? I was like,
Yeah,
I can jump out the window. But yeah,
key.
it's a really important thing.
Especially when it comes to clients, that's key. It's like at the end of the day, you allowed them to hire you, if you want to boil it down just to that, right? Like
Yeah.
you could say no. I mean, unless you're in that very desperate stage for clients, and even then, you still got to take responsibility, because you still could say no, right? And
Yeah.
it's an important one, because you don't want to become that old jaded dog trainer,
Yeah.
that resents the whole world and thinks that all dog owners suck. And it's like, no, they don't all suck. You might just suck, and you got to figure out a way to suck less,
Yeah, you're both having a bad day. But again, it comes back to that cold shower. It comes back to that jumping in the ocean. Is like, if you do that in the morning, no matter how hungover you wake up, no matter how much your life sucks that day, if you blast yourself with cold water, you're going to get out going like, I can do this, in a good positive. That's been my experience anyway. And I've never met anybody that did the whole Wim Hof, WIMHOF, anybody that did the Wim Hof method that didn't have the same experience. You're over oxidated, you've dumped a ton of adrenaline, and you have all that blood now out of your frontal cortex around your organs. It makes a
what you
huge,
like the clarity
difference. You can handle stress. Yeah. It's amazing. So I think, yeah, 100%, just like light and invigorated. But I think that's the part where some of the lessons that I've learned have been like in communication with clients is like, it's especially if you're a new trainer, it's not gonna be great all the time because you're not communicating properly, right? And that only comes through the experience of like, okay, I got to communicate this, and I got to communicate that, and I got to communicate that. That was one thing about my last mentorship that was always so good. Duke always said, like, call them, pick up, do not send an email, pick up the phone, maybe address and say, great, let's chat. But if you don't have that mentorship of someone saying, I had two people in my life that were, one person would say, do the hard thing, and the other person would say, do the easy thing. And anytime I chose the easy thing, like give them their money back or whatever, it always backfired.
Yeah.
Always backfired. But having the conversations and then learning in the future, like I had someone show up on my house at like 10 o'clock at night, and they're like, where's my dog? It was there for a board and train. I'm like,
sleeping.
What? Right here. Right here. And they're like, well, you didn't post any pictures today about my dog. Like, where is he? Like, I want to make sure he's alive. And I'm like, okay. So now to prevent that, I tell everyone, I remind people, because I've had some people send me, their dogs for a board and train just to get their dog, local Facebook famous, like, which is mind boggling. But now I tell people, friendly reminder, I tell this to everyone, your dog, you're paying me to train your dog, not to post about them on social media. You know, I'll do both, and you can text me and call me, but don't just show up at my house.
Yeah, that's
They're like,
crazy.
why the hell would I do that? And I'm like, because people go crazy,
Right.
and I need to prevent that because I go to bed at 9:30. You know.
And that experience taught you to set that boundary, though, right? Otherwise, you would have
Yeah,
never set it.
right. So, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But learning from that mistake and then actually doing it, you know, having a really good contract. I had a dog go four-wheeling with me, and then ran over to me screaming and dropped dead. Like, boom, fell over, dropped dead. And the dog had a pre-existing condition where basically when he was a puppy, he got an infection. It went to his heart, and so he had a tear in his heart, basically. Conveniently, the people, you know, but I didn't have that in my contract. But the people had, you know, they were farmers and they went four-wheeling with the dog every day. It was just, this was the time.
Right.
The vet explained, but like doing an autopsy, even though the owners were like, no, you don't have to. You got to cover your ass, you know, like you got a family, or even yourself, like it's your word against theirs. They were wonderful, you know, regardless of the fact that their dog just died, but shit happens, you know. You got to have a good you know, Cesar Milan's advice: have a really good contract. Don't take people for their word, you know. Have supportive people around you that believe in you, whether that's staff or your parents. Maybe you gotta stop talking to your parents, you know, for a while anyway. There's a lot of that, a lot of life lessons to be learned when you're the one that has to teach responsibility and leadership and all that stuff. I think that's why a lot of dog trainers, it seems like anyway, are really into self-development.
Yep.
Really about, you know, learning and bettering, because it's that sharing stuff. Like I tell all my clients about Wim Hof, all of them, because it's a life-changing thing. And you know, some of them do it. I've got one pretty famous musician client that was like, sent me a message. He's like, 20 minutes, 20 seconds in a cold shower, 20 seconds.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
he was pretty jazzed. Yeah, so
I
there's
feel like
life-changing things that we can share.
dog training and personal development just go hand in hand, whether you like it or not. If you really want to do it properly, it's going to go hand in hand. You know, dogs read through shit. You can punish a dog on an e-collar and they're going to still be like, well, fuck you, you're not serious. You know, like it's not all just physical. They know what's going on. They read through everything. And if you can't build yourself up into somebody that's believable and confidence and that trustworthy and all of the skills that come along with being a proper leader to anybody, but especially to a dog, they'll read through it right away. It's so much easier to fake to a person than it is to a dog, you know? Like they're keen on everything because they're reading it all way before they're reading you, way before they're reading what tools you're using and what reward you're using and all of that stuff. They've already got you all summed up. So when you walk in there, if you don't have something to offer that's important, that has that energy to it. I have a new puppy here, so if you hear whining, I'm sorry. But if you don't have that, then the dogs are going to read through it. And besides for like being a business owner, which most dog trainers own their businesses, you got to have some personal development, but it's for the dogs. It goes and then it's for the interactions with the people. And then like ultimately it turns around where it's like, this is all for yourself and it's awesome. And it creates this beautiful cycle. But I think it has to go hand in hand. And I've seen like all the successful trainers that I've spoken to and gotten to know over the past couple of years. And, you know, I've spoken to a lot of trainers and network. They're all the ones that I align with and see as successful people all have that as part of their life in one way or another, whether it's gym time or Wim Hof or reading a ton of books or writing or whatever it is to work on their personal development. It has to be there to be good at this craft. I think it's like an innate part of it that people who want to be good at it end up just being drawn towards it because you know it's there. It has to be done. Dogs will read through your bullshit before anything else. Yeah,
before you see it yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. It's the beautiful thing. I always say that. So my Marley, my first dog, my wild child, he was super reactive. And when I look back on it, well, so was I. Like I was a reactive person then. I didn't react the same way as him. I didn't lash out, but I went and got high or got drunk instead of dealing with shit. And like, I was just very reactive and impulsive. So why should he have impulse control if his leader had zero impulse control either? Like we're just doing our thing together, being psychos.
Yeah.
And like once like we both started to get our shit together, yeah, there was training involved, but I also worked on myself, which in turn made it easier to work on him. And I just think that it correlates in such a strong way. I've seen it, at least in my life.
Yeah. It was the hardest lesson that I ever learned from Cesar Milan. I asked him. I stood up and asked the question. I was like, I literally had this dog pull me from the hotel on my skateboard. That's a 6-mile run. And he pulled me the whole way, and look at him, he's jacked. What, like, how do I fix that? And he went like, well, you seem pretty jacked yourself. And I was like, it's because my dog's jacked. And he's like, no, that's not why. And it was, he's like, when you learn to be calm, your dog will be calm. And I was like, I need the answers. And that's the part that took 10 years almost to learn, and is a great valuable lesson. And that's the part that it's a great answer. It's the real deepest answer you can get. But when someone's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to euthanize the dog then, or I'm gonna have to bring the dog back to the shelter then because like he's destroying my apartment and whatever. I think that's the part where like people need more practical tips than just like be a calm, assertive leader. Is like, that's great, but I need actionable steps, which there are actionable steps
where the
to becoming a
obedience
calm, assertive leader. But that's where, just the basic obedience of like, put a prong collar on the dog and go for a walk and don't let him, freak out at the neighbors, or whether that's a halty or a gentle leader, or, do 5 minutes of food training every day just to get some of that more instead of just, watching Netflix and partying or, whatever. So there's those actionable steps. And that's where, that's also why in the 7 Elements Doggett Style course, I included a you section. So there's 6 elements about the dog, and then there's one whole you section. So that talks about Wim Hof. It talks about what is leadership, what is, what it means to ignore your dog in a healthy way, and a few different videos that way. You'll get it. We'll talk again once you're Doggett Style educated.
That's awesome. All right. Here's my question I like to ask every trainer that I talk to. Hopefully you don't know it, but you might. If you listen to any of these, you've heard it. What's the one thing that if every dog owner was listening to Evan Doggett talking right now that you'd want them all to know? Dog owners, not trainers.
The secret of dog training. It's the episode number 1 of my podcast, and it's the first thing that you see in the online program. The secret to dog training is, if you want your dog to be good at anything, make it the only way they eat. So if you want your dog to be really good at coming when called, it's the only way they eat. They don't eat any other way. Come, here's some food. Come, here's some food. Come, here's some food. Come, here's food. You want your dog to be really good at walking on leash. When they're in the heel position, it's the only way they eat. Now, it's not the end all be all and solve absolutely everything. But I would say that like you can achieve a lot. If your dog is terrified of men with mustaches and sombreros, go to Mexico and make that the only way your dog eats is from men with mustaches and sombreros. Right?
Yeah, it's powerful.
I would say that would be the one thing. And the other thing, because there's never just one, is learn about nutrition. Nutrition is everything. There's a lot of things that you can learn to prevent cancers. And even if your dog, and even if you're doing all the things, cancer's in all of us, but there's a lot of nutritional things that you can do to postpone or block cancer and all that other shit from happening, behavioral issues, all that stuff, by just creating a little natural multivitamin for your dog. You're probably throwing away a lot of it in the compost every day that your dog could be having, which will really help behaviorally and longevity and shedding 50% less and all that stuff. There's a ton that we can learn nutritionally as well.
Do you have any recommendations for owners of books or sources that they can go to learn more about nutrition? Because I feel like that's such a hard one for people because of how much misinformation is out there about what's good for dogs health-wise.
Yeah. I would say probably the first place that I would send anyone is to Facebook and go to Planet Paws. Planet, like the place you live, and Paws, like what's on your dog's foot. Planet Paws, and that's like the #1 pet food blogger in the world, Rodney Habib, and then Dr. Karen Becker is on there. He's a hometown kid. He's from Nova Scotia, and they have great information. It's a lot of really good information. They also have a paid group. It's like $10 a month, and you can ask questions and things like that. That's where I typically send people initially. And then Raw Feeding 101 with Scott J. Marshall, the second. Scott's great. He's got books and audiobooks and programs. Kim Gautier's book is pretty good. But yeah, Planet Paws, Raw Feeding 101, probably the easiest places to go. And then I would say, like, do your best to not get overwhelmed. Like, I still, by times, I'm like, anxiety around raw feeding and all that stuff. And then I just go, like, just do your best and move on. You know, do a little bit better every day.
I had Peter on here, Peter Cincarelli. For people who don't know, you guys should all get to know him. He's a great dude. So I had him on here, and he was saying a similar thing. He's like, yeah, there's a ton of information and a ton of things, but at the same time, don't get yourself crazy over it, because just the fact that you're feeding your dog a basic raw diet, if you're doing that, is a lot better than what the average dog in North America is eating, you know? And that in itself, it's like, yeah, there's always more you can do. There's always more you can learn, and supplements and all these natural vitamins and things that you could add in. But if you understand the basics of raw feeding and you're sticking to that, like, that in itself is amazingly better. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Then what?
Yeah, but to even step it back a notch, because understanding the basics of raw feeding is complicated. So if you even feed kibble, but then add in, you chop up or blend up some spinach, some broccoli, some sardines, and an egg every day.
Yeah.
Amazing. You know, you have some leftover red pepper, you give that to the dog. Amazing. Little bit of fresh every day. Take out 20% of the dog's dog food and add in 20% fresh. Purdue University did studies upwards of 93% reduction in cancer rate. So you don't have to be, I still feed my dogs dog food sometimes, for sure. For training, absolutely, they're eating dog food and treats and all that stuff. But that's the part where, like, you know, like, I'm a surfer. I eat pretty clean. I don't drink. I don't do drugs and whatever anymore. I don't smoke anymore. But I still eat McDonald's once in a while. You know, like, I think it's the stress and the obsession of doing things perfectly that is more carcinogenic than actually eating McDonald's once in a while or eating. You know, so that stress or that lack of stress goes a long way. So 20%, but you can learn that on Planet Paws. They've got a great video and sheets.
Rodney Habib is really awesome. I watched a lot of his stuff and read a lot of his blogs. Yeah,
it's a great guy.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. We've been on for almost an hour and 40 minutes. Let's wrap it up. Tell everyone how they can find you, where you are, all that stuff. Social media.
Doggett Style, doggettstyle.com. Just type in Doggett Style. There's only one. There's only one.
A podcast too. Is that also Doggett Style?
Yeah, okay. Doggett Style. Just Doggett Style anywhere. Podcast, online program, website, the Facebook page. Getting more active on Instagram and TikTok, and just trying to be everywhere.
TikTok is fun. I've been having fun on TikTok. All right.
Nice.
Cool. I appreciate you coming on, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
I appreciate you. You're doing awesome stuff. I look up to you.
Thanks, man. We'll
I appreciate everyone too, and who's listening, wherever you guys are listening. I appreciate you all. I appreciate all the listeners and the community that's built around this. It's really fucking awesome, and I love you all, because a podcast with no one listening would still be cool to talk to Evan, but it's nice to know that people are enjoying it. So I appreciate all you guys, and for all of you who tuned in live, I appreciate you as well. Love you all.
Awesome.
And stay kind.
Awesome. Know what you're loved. Bye, guys.
Bye.